Friday Night Racing
on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.
And a very good afternoon to you this Friday afternoon. You're very welcome along to Friday Night Racing. If you're a little bit confused, every Friday afternoon we broadcast on all of Off the Ball's social channels, so on our app is the best place to get us. And then every Friday evening we're live from 8 o'clock on Off the Ball on News Talk. As ever, Johnny Ward is here. Johnny, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ger. How are you?
I'm very well. You're lording it over me because you've taken the lead in our 10 to follow competition with the Tote.
It's a long way to go, but yeah, Manel Indo did the job at Navan on Sunday. I have actually 4 runners in the next sort of 50 hours or so, starting off with Paisley Park, who I backed in the World Hurdle at Cheltenham, which seems about 3 years ago at this stage. It was actually in March when he disappointed, but I'm putting my faith in him maybe coming back to some sort of form. He's just making his seasonal bow as we speak. They're lining up the tape, so I'm quite hopeful that I'll extend my lead over you, Ger. But although I assume you have a couple of runners on Sunday as well.
I do. I think we're both on a couple of the same horses at the weekend, which we might get into with Henry Bromhead in a couple of minutes' time as well. The weekend is shaping up to be one of those weekends where we look back in a couple of months' time and go, do you remember what happened at Fairyhouse? I see that now. I see that form line.
Yeah, I hope it's... do you remember what happened at Fairyhouse? That was during the time when we had that mad lockdown thing, and now everything's back to normal, because maybe once everything gets back to normal, it'll be like, God, what was life actually like? But unfortunately, obviously, we're still going on, and it's disappointing for the sponsors, bar one, because it puts so much money and effort into this real swashbuckling card with 3 grade 1s and a grade 3 hurdle as well for the juveniles. So it's really, in terms of quality, it's one of the best race meetings of the year in Ireland. I'd have to say now, I think it's a fairly disappointing turnout in terms of depth. You know, if you look at the Royal Bond, Ballyadam, who I have in my 10 to follow, he's taken on 6 horses, but doesn't really have the look of a grade 1. If you look at the Drinmore, there's only 4 runners, and unfortunately that's probably a product of Inva Allen basically scaring off everything else. I think he's 6 or 7 to 1 on at the moment, so that kind of shows you where you're at there. And then you have the Hatton's Grace, which is unquestionably the pick of the 3, and that'll bring HDB into the play because he has Honeysuckle, who unfortunately is also odds on. So that's kind of just a reflection of the race, and that the Hatton's Grace only has her as the highest rated runner, rate 159, so nothing rated 160 or higher, which is kind of evidence the fact that it's not the strongest renewal in the world, but fascinating racing nonetheless.
All right, Johnny, that's an appropriate time for me to remind everybody Friday Night Racing is brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie. You can follow the Twitter account at HRI Racing, and the hashtag is every racing moment. Our guest this week is Henry de Bromhead. Henry, how are you?
Yeah, very good, thanks. And yourselves?
Is Johnny the only person in the world who calls you HDB?
Well, yeah, possibly. I can't think of too many offhand anyhow, yeah.
Well, that would be typically. I hope he hasn't offended you already.
Johnny's pretty unique.
Well, there you go.
Sorry, yeah.
You know the crack. Yeah. That's great.
Well, it's the day of everything is, you know, we try to do everything shorter nowadays. Nobody has time to cook properly. Nobody has time to do anything. You know, everything is bang, bang, bang. So HDB is just all about the abbreviation, really.
It's our accelerated culture.
My respect for the man.
Well,
that's it.
I mean, maybe that's not a bad starting point for us. Your training style is relatively unique. You don't try and force anything. You let nature take its course. Can you maybe talk to us a little bit about that? It's certainly something I was very keen to understand a little bit about your training process.
I suppose you've been well informed anyhow. We probably wouldn't try to push the younger horses too hard early on. Let them do what they can do. Obviously, every horse, you know, competing has to be at a certain level, but maybe then I probably would have more of an eye on chasing in time, or would have with a lot of our horses. So by doing that, sort of found that just letting them develop themselves and hopefully they'll sort of keep improving seem to work for us. So yeah, that would probably be it.
What is loose schooling?
Loose schooling is something I learned from a very famous dealer, a man called Tom Costello, who was a big horse dealer and massive farmer in Clare, and with his sons. And I went there years ago to buy some horses for a big client of ours, Alan Potts at the time. It was when we bought Sizing Europe, actually. And anyhow, this man, Tom Costello, brought us into a big indoor school, so an enclosed area. And it was like 50 meters by 20 meters. And he'd just leave these young horses loose in this school. And he had a fence on one side and a hurdle on the other. And the horses would just take off, and he and two of his sons would stand down the center of this indoor, and they'd leave the horses off, and the horses just go off loose and jump away to their heart's content. So the horses would be getting confidence and learning themselves where to put their feet, rather than having a jockey sort of instructing them or telling them what to do. So when they're going 30 miles an hour in a race, as good as a jockey could be, if they're comfortable within themselves, having done this since they were 3 years old, it would stand to them. And I suppose what really brought me onto it was that Tom Costello had sold 7 Gold Cup winners at that time, including Best Mate, who won 3, and all his horses were renowned to be great jumpers, or the majority of them. So that's where I got it from. So that's what we do.
That sounds a little bit fluky that you happened to be there and go in and do it. Were you looking for something at that stage? Were you kind of, obviously you were curious enough to ask, okay, how have you produced these 7 Gold Cup winners? What's the story? And he had the confidence and happiness to share that with you, but it's serendipity, right?
Yeah, you could. It was. Yeah, I also worked for a brilliant trainer when I was 21 in Dorset, a guy called Robert Olner, and he used to buy all his horses from Tom Costello. One of them was there is a lady called Dido Harding, who is a very successful businesswoman in London now, but she wanted a pointer for her to ride, and Robert ended up buying this horse for very small money. For her, called Cool Dawn, that actually went on to win the Gold Cup for her. Like, she literally bought it as a hobby horse for her to ride every Saturday in point to points in England, and they ended up winning the Gold Cup together. Anyway, he came from Tom Costello, and Robert used to love buying off him because he used to say all his horses could jump. So I sort of had an idea that whatever he did was good. And look, it's not all of it, but it certainly helps, and as I say, he sold a lot of good horses over the years. And
so just so I'm getting this right, it's all the horses. It's not just the young horses who haven't been broken in. It's getting horses fit. Part of that will be loose schooling, even for the most experienced horses.
Yeah, it would certainly be part of our regime. Yeah, absolutely. Most of them love it. They're let off loose. They're allowed gallop down over this fence, and it's great fun for them. So they actually really enjoy it. Now, like I say, it's not just there's way more that goes into it as well. But that, at least they get confident in their own ability, and it's good crack for them.
Yeah.
So it's not just constantly going up and down a gallop. Every day. Some days we'd just go in there and do that, and they really enjoy it. Yeah, like Special Tiara he was a spectacle in our indoor. How he could go around and it's quite tight. I was always another man, Demi O'Byrne, I saw loose school as well, and he used to always say you need the horse near you. So it's only 20 meters wide with these fences on either side. So he always said you need the horse near you so you can sort of control the horse while it's loose. And to see, Special Tiara weighing 540 kilos, big horse galloping around this enclosed area, it was a spectacle, to be honest. And he would go flat out.
Do you put saddles on them so that it feels like it will do on race day?
No. Sometimes we would. If next time you've Rachael on it, ask her about the indoor school. She hates it when I get her to ride them around there because, no, she doesn't hate it, but it certainly keeps her on her toes anyhow, definitely.
Are you surprised more trainers don't do it, Henry?
I know. Funny. I hear a lot. I hear a lot of people now. Actually, I heard some horse that I hear Champ had gone to Henrietta Knight. A lot of people are like Henrietta Knight. She was another person who did it. She used to buy. She bought Best Mate from Tom Costello. She had. She obviously had seen him doing it, and she used to do it a lot in her training regime. And I hear now a lot of people are sending, when you hear a dodgy jumper, you often hear that it's been sent to Henrietta Knight in the UK to do it. So I think more and more people are starting to look into it. But as I say, look, it's not. There's plenty more things you need to do as well. But certainly it gives them a bit of confidence. Yeah.
It's interesting. Obviously, Champ could be running at Leopardstown at Christmas, which I think, especially in what'll be a different Christmas and maybe a more boring Christmas for most people than other years, it's going to be really exciting to see him because of that jumping issue. But just watching Fiddler on the Roost race earlier, he was beaten in a 3-runner race. But the close-ups of the horses jumping the fences just kind of got me thinking that I don't know if we really, in terms of our TV work and camera work, do we actually focus enough or as much as we can on how amazing the spectacle is of a horse jumping a fence, particularly a 2-mile chaser, because you're obviously pretty much the king in that regard. But do we show it enough on TV just how the spectacle that it is?
Yeah, I suppose we probably possibly could do more. It is. I mean, Rachel sent me it was a video clip of Notebook jumping the second in Nace the other day. And I mean, he actually stood off outside the wings. It was an incredible jump. But I mean, you can actually, I think we put it on YouTube, Special Tiara Loose Schooling. If you put that in, I mean, he was a sight to behold. And also, do you remember when he won in Kempton one Christmas? The crowd, Barry Geraghty rode him, and the jumps he was getting out of him around there was just unbelievable. And you could hear the crowd like ooh and ah every time he was it was amazing. So yeah, we could probably do more. Yeah, absolutely.
Does it suit as well your horses that so often they are ridden prominently and that you make use of that asset, whereas other trainers, I suppose, like their horse to be held up, but you can kind of have confidence in their fitness and their ability to jump hard and jump consistently well?
Yeah, I suppose I suppose we would feel that it is one of our advantages maybe. So that's probably why ours are ridden a bit more prominently. But we've probably lost plenty of races doing that as well. So I'm trying to temper that a little bit and, leave that probably more to Rachel now as well.
Oh, so you're leaving it a bit more up to kind of what happens in the race or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. When I look back, I'd probably, I was probably, too forceful in giving instructions. You hear Gerald Lyons talking, I don't think he's ever given Colin Keenan instruction, and I suppose the reality is when you have these top riders, that's their job. And you might, I'd say maybe, what are you thinking? And that would be it. And if I had a strong view, I'd probably put it across. But other than that, Rachel's generally thinking the same anyhow.
So what changed? When did you decide that was going to be? Was it because you ended up having a jockey as good as Rachel?
Yeah, probably had a lot to do with it. And it was possibly even before that. It was, we started, Davy Russell started riding for us a lot. And I definitely felt Davy Russell did not need to hear me, nor want to hear my view on what he was going to do. And that started to make me think about it. And then I suppose as you get more and more confident with your rider, when Rachel first started with us, we were only getting going, together. But now, sure, yeah, you'd have so much confidence. She generally, I suppose they always say the best jockey is the one that makes the least mistakes. Everyone, talking about horses racing, there's always going to be mistakes and problems and whatever, but you just get confident in your riders. Yeah.
Can we go back? Part of me always feels, particularly when we're talking to national hunt trainers in Ireland who aren't Willie Mullins or Gordon Elliott, or before that going up against Aidan O'Brien when he was still training National Hunt horses, that you kind of needed to zig while the rest of the industry is zagging. In some ways, was the philosophy that underpins the loose schooling the same philosophy that underpins I'm going to get my horses to be ridden aggressively, and that's going to be the identity of any of the horses and our style and our signature move in some ways. Was that how you started out?
Yeah, very much so. It's interesting. Yeah, you say it like that. For example, bumpers are like the sort of holy grail in Ireland. Like you could have 5 odds-on shots and a 20-to-1 shot in the bumper, and you'd be walking around Thurles or Clonmel, people would be saying, you know, they wouldn't care about the ones. It's like, do you fancy the horse in the bumper? You know, and it's a big part of our psyche over here. And so we used to, what pointed it out to me was probably Sizing Europe was the best horse I had at the time and had ever had. And like, I got him beaten in 2 bumpers. And then, I mean, I trained him so hard, you know, I had to train him hard to win his bumper at Naas. He beat a good horse at Noel Meads called Rin Row. And he actually sort of was starting to get sort of pissed off with being trained at the time, because I'd been so hard on him probably to do that. And anyhow, that made me start thinking about it. And we actually sort of have gone away from bumpers, because you're competing against Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Joseph O'Brien. You know, if you think of the staying races on the flat that they've won around the world, like Joseph 2 Melbourne Cups, Willie's won all sorts of races, all those staying races at Ascot, you're up against their training technique of training flat stayers in bumpers. And I just thought, you know what? I don't need to be getting involved in that. So I need to focus more on jumping and head that direction. And look, I think it's worked for us. We don't win too many bumpers. My stats are appalling. But if we do win one, it usually means it's they turn out to be pretty decent horses. But we just don't really focus on them now. And we leave the lads at that. And still, obviously, you're against them in hurdles and chases as well. But I'm kind of hoping maybe mine are fresher and more maybe keen on jumping or whatever in hurdles, over hurdles and fences.
I find that fascinating, Henry, because I cannot get my head around bumpers. For example, if you win a point-to-point now, or you win a bumper, effectively you're more of a sellable proposition if you win a good point-to-point. You could win a good bumper and not be actually sold for as much as back in the day. As well as that, you know, these are horses that are doing something that they're just not bred for, and they're kind of alien to, in a way. They will crawl for maybe a mile and a half. Then they might kind of sprint. A lot of the horses will be caught out of the ground. Patrick Mullins might be up front, and the horse will go on and win. But like, if Blackbow is a good example for me. So Blackbow won a point-to-point 26th of March 2017, so 3.5 years ago. He didn't run then until the following December, but he ran in bumpers, and he obviously ran well in the Cheltenham bumper, but he won his first bumper. He then went like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He won 6 races where he didn't win. He ran 4 times over hurdles. He's now 7 going on 8. And this is a horse that's an out-and-out chaser. And I couldn't get my head around, and this is me questioning Willie Mullins, which is obviously insane, but why they spend so long with the horse in bumpers and maiden hurdles. And it was fascinating. He absolutely bolted up in his chase debut and looked brilliant at Navan. But I did make this point during the year. You've produced these horses time and time again this year to either win or go close or run very well over hurdles first time out. And you clearly don't think necessarily that they need to go in bumpers before doing that.
Yeah, look, they're all so successful. I just, as Ger said there a minute ago, you know, does it make you trying to take them on? You're trying to take them on bumpers, hurdles, and fences. I agree with you. I kind of just, I'm not questioning the lads. That.
Ooh. Slightly frozen.
Them and they're amazing at it. I just don't want them on. I just don't really want to.
Slightly frozen line there. We'll redial that and just see if we can get a better connection there. But
it's interesting what he said about size in Europe there, Ger, because this was a horse who, if ever a horse loved his racing and loved everything he did in really tough competition, namely 2 mile chases, yes, in bumpers, he was more or less fed up with it, and he was getting trained hard to win a bumper, and he was like, I don't really fancy this, because he didn't have a fence in front of him, he didn't have a hurdle in front of him, and that could mean the horse just went sour. So it's kind of like maybe to be in tune with what the horse actually wants. But it's interesting because, as he says, he doesn't have a good bumper record. That's because he doesn't really run them in bumpers. He doesn't run his good horses in bumpers, and it's a strange one for me. I don't really see the benefit, but I guess the trainer, like the top Henry, like Willie and Gordon and Noel Meade, they run them away in bumpers. They probably think, well, it's early in their development, they're not going to fall, they're likely not going to get injured, and we always have next year or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. When we're talking chasing, we're talking over the big fences and the intermediate distance as opposed to the staying chases. Staying chases is the Gold Cup, right?
Yeah, and then like really the most exciting chaser, without a shadow of a doubt, is the 2 mile chaser. When you look at Shishkin on his chase debut, you look at Sizing Europe, even Specialty Ara to a lesser extent.
Because they have the pace, is that why?
Yeah, because that, like, as I was alluding to earlier, I don't think we really showcase this enough. You know, we've probably an awful long way to go in terms of like cameras in the helmets of the jockeys, that you can probably back a horse and literally look at that horse's look at that jockey cam for the race. That could be something that happens in the future. But a horse, you can imagine being thrown out of a car or in a car and putting your head out the window, and imagine jumping a fence when the horse is getting a little bit fatigued at 40 miles an hour. And that's what it's about. And like the 2 mile chasers, Moscow Flyer, you know, Azertiop, Masterminded, these, you know, Sprinter Sacra, these horses are iconic. And the Gold Cup is great, but at the same time, they're a lot faster, basically.
Yeah, it's not the slog. Henry Bromhead is back with us. This is
Henry Bromhead, of course, has never won the Gold Cup, and he's not going to knock the prospect of winning a Gold Cup this year, even though winning a champion chase is great. It'd be nice for you to win a Gold Cup as well, Henry.
Oh yeah, absolutely, I'd love to.
I have one last kind of backward-looking question before we start looking forwards. So you took over your dad's yard around about 1999. Did you have an idea of what type of trainer you wanted to be? Did you know that you were going to be relying on the skills of the horse and the horsemanship from the get-go, or did that kind of evolve over a period of time?
No, definitely evolved. I was, like I said, I was with Robert Ulner, and then I was assistant trainer to Sir Mark Prescott, who was a real flat trainer, just a flat trainer, should I say. And when I first came home, I probably trained the jumpers more like we had a great start. After a couple of years, and I found I was burning my horses out too much, basically, and you know, they just were becoming disinterested. So it took a while then to sort of find. We were down to sort of maybe 3 winners in a season, and then I just had to try different things, and gradually sort of, you know, got my own system going, and I suppose constantly tweaked that ever since. Yeah.
I wonder too about like that part of the world, how rooted to the community you are. That's the other side of this as well. Like I think we've had this conversation once before. I remember being in Dunmore East. It must have been 2010, where we were in the bar and we were kind of having an eye on the racing, and suddenly the whole place went silent, and then you just had everybody on their feet screaming at the telly because Sizing was coming home, and it was like a real sense of being in a place where something magical was happening in foreign fields, but it was a very, very local triumph. And like for me, that really brought home just how rooted to the community any of the successful Irish trainers have to be, because that's where you're from. Like we see you at the racetracks, but actually the operation is such an important part of the community. And I wonder, do you feel that? Is that like, do you feel like a representative of an area in any way?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll never forget one of my first big wins. Again, it was Sizing Europe. It was Cheltenham. It was the, oh God, I've got a memory blank. Johnny will say it, good handicap hurdle at the November meeting at Cheltenham. And it was absolutely the Greatwood. And it was milling rain, and there was no one out. And he was coming back up the walkway back into the winner's enclosure. and I was walking back beside him, drenched through. And there was one man at the rail, and he said, "Jesus, it's a great day to be a Waterford man." He said to me like this, and it was just, you'd never forget that. And yeah, you would. It's no matter where you are in Ireland, there's always huge support and interest in it. It's just part of us, and we're very lucky. We've a great following down here. Great support.
It helps too when you've a steady stream of winners, that the level of success and the level of horses. Was there a tipping point at some point where you went, okay, we've got this now, we actually at least understand how to do this and how to plan for the future? I know sports people and business people are always very reluctant to say, oh, we've got it made, but where at least you were like, deep breath, we can plan now.
Never. I don't think that day will ever come. No, I don't think so. No, you're as good as your last winner, and you have to constantly moving forward. And there's never that big. Well, if it does happen, I'll let you know, but it hasn't happened yet.
Well, it's obviously keeping you young and keeping you sharp then.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you're always on your toes, and there's always something to that has to be dealt with. I find anyhow. I'm probably a bit of a worrier, but I think attention to detail and just trying to do everything right is very important, and you have to be on top of that the whole time.
Well, your stats, in fairness, like from the start of the last decade, which would be this probably 11 seasons now, is 19%, 15, 15, 15, 16, 16, 13, 16, 16, 15. So you've developed obviously a consistency and a style that certainly works. And I would put it to you, Henry, that maybe the fact that you put these horses ridden prominently is probably getting you more winners than if you weren't doing that. And it's something that you figured out a long time ago actually probably works, because your horse can jump and they stay out of trouble.
Yeah, it certainly helps. You'll have to excuse me. There's someone just decided to blow the blower right outside the office. So I'm just going to close the window. It's sorry. It's definitely I would say it definitely helps. Being handy away, you have less chance to get in trouble in a race. But there's different tactics suit different horses, and I need to sort of think about that and listen to the team here with Rachael and everyone involved here as to what way we should be riding them, etc. Because definitely certain horses, like obviously Special Tiara loved being ridden up front. He loved jumping. And that was, I suppose our tactic was trying to put everyone else to the sword and question their jumping. The year we won the Champion Chase, Duvan was odds on for the whole year, and obviously on ability and ratings was always going to beat us. But he hurt his pelvis in the middle of the race. He clattered one or two of the early fences. Did he do that because he was trying to go at Special Tiara's pace? Was he trying to keep up with him a bit? You'd have to ask, was that so? Yeah, I suppose by using their jumping at speed, sort of 2 miles, that works. But 3 miles, you see Gordon, we got nabbed the other day by the storyteller. He was hacking away out the back, minding his own business, and he came and chinned us on the line. With Chris's Dream, who was probably running with the choke out a little bit and winging fences, but then just got nabbed in a 3 mile race. So I suppose you need to employ certain tactics for certain horses over certain distances. And then pace is probably the most important thing from a jockey's perspective. If you're up front in a really fast run race, the likelihood is you're going to burn yourself out, so the jockey has to judge the pace and decide where they want to be, so you'd often see the top one slipping back when it's a fast run race. And I don't know if you read Ruby's book, it was all about counting. And when he used to ride in bumpers, he knew exactly how many seconds from furlong pole to furlong pole. and that's all pace. Like if they were doing it in X amount of seconds, he knew they were going too fast in a 2-mile race on that track, on that ground. Like he knew all those, and that's what makes these guys or ladies different. Charlie Swan was unbelievable for pace. Those top ones are. And so there's various things,
Yeah, the internal clock is hugely important. I just want to tell everybody about the HRI Awards. They're going to be broadcast on Racing TV on the 15th of December. You've been nominated for the National Hunt Award alongside Rachel, Gordon Elliott, Paul Townend and Willie Mullins. So fairly vaunted company there, and as competitive as any of the races that you've been in. But Ride of the Year, Rachel's ride on A Plus Tard at Leopardstown last Christmas is nominated. Franberry shortlisted 6 different rides, and the public can vote on this. You just have to visit hri.ie. What was so special about Rachel's ride on A Plus Tard last Christmas?
Yeah, it was probably back to what we were just saying, pace. I'd always say in those 2 miles, be positive to the first, jump the first, and assess after that. And that's what we sort of do generally. And she just, she obviously decided they were going quick enough, and she slotted in and followed and got a lovely lead down more or less to the last. Like, it was a brilliant ride. Yeah, absolutely. But one of many like that she would have done throughout the year. But yeah, it was, in fairness.
When did you realise she was so good? What was the thing that made you think, okay, I'm going to invest my time and energy in my best horses and build this partnership?
I landed it in Liverpool to go to Aintree one year, and shared a taxi with Eddie O'Leary into the city and from the airport. And he just said in his way,
inimitable way.
Yeah, yeah, that's the word. Yeah, would you consider using Rachel? You should consider using Rachel, because she's a brilliant rider. She works so hard, and blah blah blah, his various reasons. And I went, yeah, I could. She'd ridden a couple for me. She fell on one in Cheltenham one day, and and I was like, yeah, I could. And I was looking for someone at the time, and I suppose I wanted someone who had a bit more experience. I had some younger riders who were brilliant, but it just didn't quite work out. And we had Andrew Lynch, as well, who was brilliant, but he was hurt at the time. So we said we'd give Rachel a go, and it was summer season, and it just basically everything started winning, and she was riding them all when they were winning, and she just was great to work with, and just went from there. At the time, I think Noel Feely was riding Mona Lee. He came over to ride him a couple of times, but then she rode him in February, and the whole thing just developed, and it's the easiest thing. She just kept winning on them, and
sometimes there's no science to these things. It's literally
that's what you're looking for, and she was a joy to work with, and she worked hard, and she got on well with everyone, and it just worked.
That's a happy, heady combination. You mentioned you're a bit of a worrier. On race days, have you got better at getting less anxious as particularly your high-profile horses who you expect to win are going to post and in the race, or does that actually get worse?
Yeah, a note on this. Henry would come in to watch the race in the press room quite regularly. So my memory would be somewhere like Tremor, where his horse would be about 17 lengths clear jumping the last, and he'd either leave the room because he couldn't watch it, or he'd give some negative comment that the horse was wrong going into the hurdle or something. So he can be quite negative even in victory.
Yeah, that's probably fair enough. Yeah, look, every horse and every horse has a different story, and it just means something different to that owner, or for whatever reason. So I'm probably and every time I have a winner, I probably think it's my last. And they all mean a lot. But I think that those top ones, it doesn't get any easier. Definitely not. I'd be pretty buzzed. I was even talking to Gordon about it in Down Royal. He had all his fancied ones out at the time, some of his bigger ones. And he was saying, like, for him as well, he was the same. It just doesn't get any easier. You're very lucky to have these horses. They're very hard to come across. and you come upon good horses. You can't just go out and buy them, and that's it, and it's your job. It's you want to try and do it as right as you can, and look, I just put myself under pressure.
But it's thousands of times a year, well, nearly thousands of times a year, where you put the saddle on the horse, and in between then and the horse actually making it to the starting line, do you have a routine? Is there something that you're doing to try and get to a moment of zen?
No, not really. To be honest, no, I don't find the zen, sadly. No, just try and focus on the race, focus on the performance, focus on the reasons why it didn't happen throughout the race if it doesn't, and just try and get an understanding for what did happen, so you can give your opinion to your client or whoever after the race, so that's probably what you'd be doing, but I'd probably jump most fences with them. And I don't know if everyone's like that, but I'm just like that. That's my makeup.
Well, it's obviously...
Sorry, excuse me for 1 second. My battery's just going low.
No worries. It's obviously working. Whatever the routine is, Johnny, it's obviously working.
It is, yeah. I suppose the Gold Cup this year, we'll talk about Honeysuckle as well. The Gold Cup's going to be very interesting because that's a race that he... will obviously desperately want to win, and I was kind of going to put it to him there about Manila Indo, because you could probably argue that he mentioned Champ, but Manila Indo was in some respects the moral winner of the RSA chase last year. But by the time he and Alaho jumped the last, I seem to recall Manila Indo made a bit of a Hames of the last. You have that big Cheltenham hill of you, and it's probably like the marathon in a race. When you run a marathon, you hit the wall or whatever. Whereas Champ had been left for Barry Geraghty to come with that wither and run. But does Manila Indo now, who's been pretty brilliant in both his starts this year, does he kind of maybe take a bit of a lead in the race this year? Because, as he says, especially in those long distance races, if you're taking on up front, you will run out of gas. And I'd say trainer Cameron Henry would be quite interesting during the Gold Cup.
He's back there now. If you want to ask a specific question, Johnny.
I don't even know what I was saying there, actually. But if in terms of the Manila Indo, I thought he was brilliant at Wexford. It's great to have a horse like that at a track, a provincial track. We obviously have Alboon Photo, whose prep is in Tramore, your local track for the Gold Cup every year. Would be one of your main rivals. But just talking about the RSA chase last year, was he in some respects the moral winner of the race because of that pace angle that you talk about? And basically, he was pretty legless coming up the hill, and it was kind of, he was done by a horse who was probably just ridden to pass the two of them out.
I'm not sure if there's a moral winner of a race. I mean, you're either the winner or you're not. We weren't. We got caught. We missed the last. We got under the last. We were slow. I don't know what Champ was landing after the last betting and running, but I mean, I'd say it was massive. And he just, he sprinted home.
Have you learned anything from that this year, or does it? Because his two runs, obviously, he was ridden relatively conservatively at Navan as well, and he doesn't seem to be anyway a one-trick pony.
No, I think he's pretty straightforward. You can do what you want with him. I'd say he's very relaxed. He's so. I mean, they went a good gallop in Wexford. They took each other on for most of the way, and then obviously Navan was slightly different. Look, that's all stuff. That's March. It's a long way away. That's all stuff we'll have to just see nearer the time what we'll do. But like I say, he's straightforward. He doesn't have to be up front banging away, And but it comes back to pace of the race. Like, there was no pace in the Gold Cup this year, and luckily Rachael went on. Unfortunately, we just got done at the top of the hill. We were a bit slow at the fence at the top of the hill, and then we were always on the back foot. They sprinted coming down the hill, but there was no gallop. So this year you did want to be sort of handy-ish, I think it all depends on the race and what's in it.
Johnny mentioned Honeysuckle as well there. That's obviously this weekend. This weekend is a pretty big weekend in terms of, we were talking about it a little bit before you came on, the quality at the top end in the fields at the weekend is really excellent. You've got a number of runners. One of the other Manellas is out as well. And will you just talk to us a little bit about the quality of horse that Honeysuckle is?
Yeah, look, she's been brilliant for us. She's an amazing mare. She came in this timid sort of light little filly as a 4-year-old. We bought her after she won her point to point. Now she's like a prima donna. If you go near her, all she wants to do is bite you or kick you. She's very funny, but she's brilliant. Yeah, bought her. She was recommended to us after she won a 4-year-old mare's maiden in Dromhead, which is a great track. That year, actually, we happened to buy Notebook, who on his third run won his point to point in Dromhead. We bought Manila Indo, who won his point to point on his first run in Dromhead. And we bought Honeysuckle, that all in that spring, which was incredible. And anyhow, she's been brilliant. Like I say, she's done nothing wrong. She's got a heart of a lion, and we feel we're very lucky to have her.
I think you touched on a point there that another thing maybe we don't sell enough in racing is the character of the horse, and she kind of maybe went in like a kid who was sent to boarding school and all of a sudden just became very good at sport and was just really confident. She obviously knows she's good.
Yeah, that's it. And you know, she's she just makes me laugh the way she is now compared to how she was, you know, but she's a queen, and look, she's unbeaten. She was brilliant at Cheltenham last year, all last season. And look, we're starting a new season now, and off we go again. These are the horses you want to try and get, and we're very lucky to have her.
Well, look,
any negatives on Sunday?
I'm sure I could give you plenty, but sure, we're in good form. We've got to start somewhere. Possibly could have done with a prep run. Didn't really want to, but having said that, wasn't mad keen on it. I hope we've done enough at home. I think we have, but look, it's a good race, very good race again, as you would expect in any Grade 1. And we just have to go and take our chance and see.
How tough was it, the decision not to go chasing?
Not overly, to be honest. You know, when you have a mare like her, like, chasing is probably a bit more risk. So she's so good at what she's doing. You know, now she jumps a fence every Sunday morning. She loses schools every Sunday morning just to stretch her legs, and she actually just takes off and jumps the fence herself. So she looks brilliant over one. So, you know, we might never say never, but she's so good at what she's doing. It actually wasn't too tough, you know.
That's interesting. Yeah, you got to send that video of send to Twitter the video of her lose school and see if people think she should jump a fence, because it'll be she's still only 6, of course.
Yeah, she's only a baby. Yeah, that's the thing. You know, still, it's funny. She's achieved so much in 2 years. You know.
Henry, it's been great spending some time with you. Really fascinating stuff about your philosophy underpinning everything, and wish you the continued success. And I hope the nerves at some point begin to ease to a point where you can actually relax and enjoy things.
Not going to happen.
Thanks very much. I'm a big fan of the show, so privileged to be on. Thanks
a million.
much.
Thanks a million.
Thanks.
That's Henry Bromhead is our guest this week on Friday Night Racing. Friday Night Racing brought to you in association with HRI.ie.
A class actor.
Yes, absolutely. Like we could have done
a noble name and a noble man, and just a seriously good trainer. Like a seriously good trainer. You can't. I put him along with Ger Lyons on the flat. They get the job done. They don't overrun the horses. They run them when they're basically right, and you can pretty much almost bank on them running their race, which is something I think as a punter you really want. And his stats are literally off the charts. He was, you know, Henry's training probably since the end of the last century now. So the guts of 25 years thereabouts. And it took him time, but just becoming a seriously good trainer. And obviously Jigginstown is going to pull out and doesn't necessarily have that many horses for other big owners, but he's top class, just top class.
I think that it's really interesting to talk to people like Ger Lyons and Henry when they exist in a world where there are the superpowers and they are successful at the same time. And when you can find people, there's like a Moneyball element to that, really, where they've looked at the entire system and gone, I have to do this one thing and I have to do it better than everybody else. And I have to find inefficiencies within the system. And if you can do that and be successful, then those stories are some of the best stories that sport and real life throw up. And so it was great to get that insight and just that little different thing. And I am always amazed too that people share this information, that it wasn't like, no, you can't see what I'm doing. You absolutely cannot see what I'm doing because you might do it better than me. It's like, yeah, of course you can. Come on in, have a look.
Well, ultimately his horses are obviously fit, which is fine, but Henry de Bromhead training his horses compared to Willie Mullins training his horses are completely different. You know, Willie Mullins, by all accounts, he doesn't over-school them, and that's putting it mildly. A lot of the time his schooling is very limited. He just has faith in the horse, completely different mind. You know, genuinely a guy who looks at a horse and sees something I think that nobody ever sees other than him, and that's all well and good, but what Henry does obviously works for him. You wouldn't know to look at Willie Mullins that he trains them differently, but their training operation isn't comparable in many respects, yet they're both at the top of the tree. And so I guess a bit like the Kilkenny hurlers in the day when they were winning the All-Ireland every year. You can either beat them or join them or just get better than them. And I think they brought the standard of hurling. They lifted so many other teams. Galway, as a Galway fan, years and years being beaten by Kilkenny or being beaten by, the better powers. But Kilkenny drove other teams to bring up their own standards, such that hurling is probably at a standard it's never been at now. It's just incredibly good. And that was because you had that standard to aim at and ultimately beat.
Yeah, but you have to do something different. That's the other thing, is that the other teams have had to do other different things as well. There is some breaking news this afternoon. Champion jockey Oisin Murphy, this is the BBC reporting this. Champion jockey Oisin Murphy has been given a 3-month ban after testing positive for cocaine. So this has been a long-running story at this point. He denied taking the drug and said that he would fight to clear his name. This emerged on the 1st of October that his A sample was positive following a racecourse test in France in July. He's obviously the #1 jockey for Qatar Racing and retained the British Flat Jockeys Championship this year, with the title race finishing on the 7th of November. The French Racing Authority held a medical commission in October in a disciplinary hearing earlier this week. The ban will be set at 3 months. France Galop, that's the commissioners, announced their decision this afternoon. The British Horse Racing Authority has been asked to reciprocate the ban. You would assume they will, I don't know, but you would assume that if one area bans you for something like this, then you get banned. So 3 months.
It's a light sentence, being honest. I think I think the Irish ban is 2 years or something like that, and the IHRB would take kind of measures into account, and they'd look at how you're coming through the process. And there are bigger misdemeanors in the overall scheme of things, but it's a massive blow for him. And sadly, he's one of many high-profile flat jockeys who've now been done for this. And he was quite convincing in protesting his innocence, but obviously today is a bad day. All
right, well, we'll see how that story evolves, and hopefully he does some interviews and explains his side of things publicly in the coming days. Now, you were bragging about this a little bit earlier on, but just to fill in some details about where we are at the moment on our 10 to follow.
So a bit of a stretch now, to be fair, but
the Tote,
have alluded to it.
Well, I mean, look, it's the best thing that's going on in your world at the moment. The Tote 10 to follow is now in play for the National Hunt season with a guaranteed prize pool of 150 grand. We've entered stables on behalf of the Irish Injured Jockeys Fund to try and win some of that prize money for this great cause. This week sees Johnny's stable overtake mine, Manila Indo, scoring at Navan on Sunday. I've got 2 runners in the Hatton's Grace Hurdle at Fairyhouse on Sunday, with Honeysuckle and Saldier both entered. You've got several entries this weekend, including Honeysuckle.
Saldier runs now, so let me just confirm that. But that would make you have 1 runner, Ger, which is 1 less than what you initially said, which was 2, which is a big advantage to me.
Saldier's out, yeah?
Saldier does not run.
Okay, right. You've got Honeysuckle, Envoy Allen and Ballyadam, but you've got
I do.
A couple of others.
I mean, look at this for genius placing. This would be like, it'd be like having a team 6 points clear at the top of the league or something, going into, late November and thinking it was all over. But like the 3 of them could very conceivably win. I think 2 of them will win. The other one probably has a great chance. And Paisley Park was second there in his comeback run behind Time Hill, which is a really good race. So essentially, you're screwed. The game is over for you, and I'm going to win.
I don't think you get any points for second, do you?
No, but you get Moral. You see, Henry wasn't interested in the old Moral.
He definitely wasn't.
The Moral winner, it just doesn't count.
That's what separates him from us.
Although there's definitely an argument that the best horse doesn't always win, if I put it that way, and he has a massive chance to win the Gold Cup. If you're backing 1 horse to win the Gold Cup next year, Manila Indo is bulletproof. He's absolutely bulletproof. He's 7 or 8 to 1, and he's certainty to run a good race, pretty much.
Yeah, certainly we run a good race, but you've already backed something else in that race. As far
Okay, as have you.
Yeah. No, I haven't. Not
for
in
the
that
goal
race.
for the Grand National.
Yes,
we're in
yes.
the Preston Percy camp, but I would have no issue backing this fella as well.
Okay, all right. To follow all of the Tote 10 to follow action, visit tote.ie. We'll keep you up to date on Saturday afternoon and on Sunday with everything that's happening in Fairyhouse and across the rest of Irish racing right here on all of the OTB channels. Every Friday afternoon we broadcast live on the OTB Sports app, and then every Friday evening we're on Off the Ball on Honeysuckle as well. Johnny, see you next week. Take care.
See you next week, and just to give you a little bit of praise there, seeing as though you kind of provide me with work now and then, your Maradona homage I thought was just lovely.
Thanks very much. It was true though, all true.
Yeah, what a man, and I think in terms of a sports person that died, it actually genuinely has maybe hit people like no other sports person has, just because we're of that era, and you're just dealing with absolute greatness, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that was it. It's a little piece of our childhood.
And complexity, and obviously, that he was so flawed as well.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, 100%. Right, more of this good stuff coming your way this evening on the radio from 7. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Friday Night Racing.
On Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Horse Racing Ireland. Love every racing moment. Visit hri.ie.